Thank you so much. Hello, cohort 25. Congratulations on graduating. This is huge. Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me out to be your graduation speaker today. Words cannot express how honored I am, and even just being part of the exhibition and seeing all of the great work that you're doing makes me so hopeful for the future of games and the future of the industry. So please, just again, great job. Now, I had a whole section of my speech about me, or like doing a high-level intro, but you just did it. So I'm going to tell a story. No, it's great. I have this little section from my bio on the Squanchtendo website that I thought I'd read to you all because it kind of highlights me at a high level. So I grew up in a very small town called Spanaway, Washington, where we were very poor. There was not a lot of expendable income. At the age of 6, somehow I persuaded my mom that all Dad wanted for Christmas was a Nintendo. She will never forget, or rather, this is in third person, of course, it's a bio, it's supposed to be that way. I'll never forget my dad's excitement when he opened it to find that it was not the drill set that he had asked for, but instead an NES. So I'd like to thank my mom. My future was powered by my dad's disappointment. And this put me on a path to really loving and playing the types of games that I would eventually work on. And as you mentioned, RPGs and shooters, that's kind of like my bread and butter, my peanut butter and jelly, Gears of War, Bulletstorm, Fortnite, Unreal Tournament, and now I'm COO and co-founder of a fantastic little indie virtual reality startup called Squanchtendo. So when I was thinking about what to talk about, the first things that came to mind were things that if I had all the knowledge I have today, what would have loved to have heard from that person with that experience 15 years out? And on the other side, as an employer, like what would I love to hear from you guys? What thoughtfulness had you put into a particular topic? And one really came to mind, and that is reinvention. And it's kind of funny to think about reinventing yourself when you're really just getting started, but stay with me here, I promise. When I refer to reinvention, I'm referring to the purposeful exploration of self that leads you to fundamentally become a different person than you are today. And there's a few key elements to that. Purposeful. That means to stop and take stock and to make a decision to do something for a reason and then evaluate whether or not it worked. Sound familiar? To any of you game developers in the room, it's just like iterating on a game experience, except you're iterating on yourself. It's your personal iteration. And I wish that somebody had told me when I was your age, when I was first going out into my first job, that the game developer that I thought I was not going to be the game developer that I'd become. And not only was that okay, but I should actively be thinking about that and evaluating as I went, almost as if I was post-morteming myself, if you will. So I hope to share with you some stories of my past and hope to take some of these key elements out of some of my experiences that turned me into this person today. So on the path to getting here, there was a series of decisions, some planned, but honestly, some purely opportunistic, that forced my own reinvention at every stage. And I'll start with my graduation day. My degree was in political science. First question I always get asked is like, what does that have to do with gaming? The answer is, well, I'm a producer, so I'm good at arguing with people. No, producer's bad, don't do that. Anyways. I really thought at the time that I was going to be a lawyer. That was just the thing that I was going to do. I thought I was a lawyer kind of person, which is weird because I played Counter-Strike literally 8 hours a day in between homework, school, and Counter-Strike. Whenever I had any free time at all, I was usually in an arcade or at a friend's house playing video games. So really what I should have been doing is following my passion and doing something in games. But when I graduated, I was really young. I was only 19, and I was studying for the LSATs, and I really had, the new thing I knew I needed to do was to take a year off and figure my stuff out. So at that time, I got a job as a recruiter. Also weird, because recruiting had nothing to do with video games. As far as I know, really nothing to do with being a lawyer. But I had this excellent opportunity to be a recruiter for the game development industry. And as someone who was a hardcore gamer, even just the chance to be able to recruit the people that actually made video games seemed incredible. There was, a catch. At the time. I was painfully shy. And it may be hard to see now, standing in front of this huge room of people. But I had crazy anxiety about meeting new people or really doing anything new. And recruiting is a lot of talking to a lot of new people about a lot of new things. But the thing is that because it was for game development, I was really able to channel my passion and my energy into that job that, even though it made me uncomfortable, allowed me to break out of my shell. And that was really important for developing me as a person. So that was 2002, which even as I was writing this, I was like, oh my God, it's 15 years ago. How old am I? Anyways, after about 6 months on the job, I met one of my hiring managers, Jimmy Bischoff. He was recruiting for a software test engineer position. And we'd been literally interviewing all day. I remember this day so well. And at the end of the day, I asked him, which candidate he'd like to hire for this position. And he looked at me and he said, I didn't like any of them. And I was like, no. Back to the drawing board, right? And he turned to me and he asked me why I had never considered working in the games industry. At that point, he had known me pretty well, knew that I loved games, and we'd worked together. We'd probably already hired at least 10 people together. And I told him I could never, I didn't think I had the aptitude or the skill set, really, to make that into my career. He said he was looking for someone that was different, that thought differently, that brought some diversity to his team. And I was like, well, you found the right person. I don't know how to test video games. I have no idea what I'm doing. And he was very, he was like, trust me, just come to Microsoft, do an interview with my test team, and we'll see how you do. And I did. I took a leap of faith. So even though I was terrified, had no experience, and the only thing I really knew about the interview at Microsoft was that it was terrible, I went to interview for this position in the sports group at Microsoft. Yeah, the sports group. And after I had met with everybody on the team, they told me they wanted to extend me an offer for their first and last hockey title that they ever made, NHL Rivals 2004. And by the way, not only was I not like a super sports fan, I had no idea how hockey was even played. So, as far as diversity goes, they were really choosing the right person. But my manager he saw something in me that he knew that I could do that job. And he saw it, just in my detail-orientedness, the way I answered the questions, that I had potential. And when he gave me that offer, another interesting moment was that I had an offer from my recruiting agency for a position making literally 8 times the money than this entry-level test position. And that same day I took it, and I turned my back on being a lawyer, and I turned my back on recruiting, and it's been games ever since. So this is my invention point for games. I was incredibly introverted, but I did well at my job, and I let my passion really drive me. And that allowed me to be open to opportunity, even though that first job into games wasn't exactly like, if I could pick exactly what my first job would be, working on a hockey game, in the sports group, I wouldn't say it would be like the very top of my list. But I worked with amazing people, and I learned so much, and the invention of myself was to just take that first step. Now, if young Tanya was listening to a talk from old Tanya and would have heard the message that I'm hoping I can relay to you guys, I really should have stopped and taken stock of where I was. This was the point where I should have been purposeful in deciding how and who I wanted to be in this new role. Part of redefining yourself is really knowing who you are in the first place. And at the time, all that I can really say about myself was that I was defined by my work ethic. I worked harder than anybody else, and therefore I thought I would see success beyond anyone else. And that's not a bad thing. It really did define me as a person as I moved forward in my career. And in production, it defined me as someone who got things done at all costs, by brute force, if necessary. Which led me to my second redefining opportunity in my career. At Microsoft, I grew up through the ranks in the test organization, eventually becoming a software development engineer in test. And at Microsoft, that means someone who actually writes code. So we write test scripts, automation, write test harnesses for games that need less manual testing and more automated testing. At the time, I thought I wanted to be a programmer. And this, for me, is a perfect example of not really knowing what my strengths were as a person. Yeah, because I wasn't a great programmer. But more about that later. I was working on a game called Vanguard Saga of Heroes. Show of hands, who has heard of that game? Yes, 2 people. 2 more than I thought. Anyways, Vanguard was an MMO, and it was a big one. It was being designed by the same team that developed EverQuest. And they needed someone who could do more than manual testing. They had millions of items in the game that spanned hundreds of NPCs, and they needed somebody to go in and be able to validate all of that and say that, yes, it was working, that you could buy and sell, trade, all of that good stuff, and then log bugs against it. So that was my job. So I wrote the automated scripts to do that in a live environment in C#. Thankfully, I worked with an amazing group of people who helped me through that because that was my first time doing it. But what I really realized through that process was that programming wasn't for me. I worked with people programmers in particular, who breathed programming day in and day out. They went home and they thought about programming. They went out to lunch and they talked about the problems they were going to solve with their buddies. And that wasn't me. So what I knew is that my passion wasn't on that path. I still knew for sure it was in games, but it wasn't in programming. So I talked to my test manager and asked if there was an opportunity to take more of a leadership position. And it turned out there was. So key takeaways from this: never be afraid to take stock of who you are, but just as importantly, never be afraid to take stock of who you're not. There's no shame in knowing that once you've discovered a weakness, a perceived weakness, that it may not be worth the trade-off to spend the time getting better at it, because that's time you could be spending finding and focusing the thing that you really love and really makes your heart sing. Because after all, if you're happy as a developer, you will be passionate, and if you're passionate, you will do great work and you will make great games. So anyways, back to 2006. That leadership position that my boss told me existed was a new opening on the Gears of War team. I had seen a little bit of Gears of War while working on Vanguard, and all I could say about that was that I really wanted to work on it. I was a huge fan of shooters and RPGs, I already mentioned this, and I was already in the RPG group, and to be able to foray into shooters was awesome, not to mention that game looked so incredible. The catch was that I would have to move from my home in Seattle, Washington, to Cary, North Carolina, to be with the development team to ship it. And I kid you not when I say literally the week before, I had an offer accepted on a house that I was going to buy. My boyfriend at the time was going to school for computer science at University of Washington in Seattle, and logically, there was really no reason at all that I should have taken this job. But here I was 2 weeks later, after having that discussion with my boss. I flew out to Cary for the first time. When I got there, there was not a single member of the test team at Epic. There was one. Hey, Scott, if you're watching this. And I was there to really build the test team proper. It was my job to come in, show immediate value, build enough trust with the team to where I knew the ins and outs of Gears and could properly validate and test and build that test team on site that we could support. In this case, ignorance was bliss because I'd never done it before. And if I'd known what I was getting into, I probably wouldn't have done it. No, I'm kidding. I would have done it. But my reinvention during that time was a huge one. I had made the big decision that I no longer wished to be on programming, and the company took a big risk on me, sending me out there as that on-site lead. And even though I had never been a lead to this point, I had never even lived in another state. I mean, I was 23. It was early days. Now, I was somewhat purposeful at that time. It was a huge opportunity for me at Epic, and I really did have some goals that I wanted to obtain when I was there. But really, the thing that I knew the most was that I needed to be as useful as possible, as quickly as possible. And that meant doing whatever it took in order to do so. Sometimes that'd be me staying up all night with the programmers just to test a feature so that they could go home and sleep better at night knowing that it worked. Sometimes it was just waiting for a build or rebuilding lighting. Those of you who never used Unreal Engine 3 back in the day of having to rebuild lighting, you all are laughing up here, where it would take 8 hours if you didn't have a... Anyways, and so it was Tanya and hopefully some help running around the whole building, clicking the rebuild lighting button on every PC. If it meant that I could enable a quicker iteration time for the team, meaning that if I were able to help them work faster, then I knew I would be invaluable. Key takeaways. Nothing was beneath me in this role in discovering basically all of the things that made me the most engaged, and that is what led me to production. I worked all hours of the day. I did late night ice cream and coffee runs. Yes, that is a thing. I helped write build scripts to help make the build process faster. I worked with the localization team so that we could get translations in more quickly. Sometimes I was just someone that I was a shoulder to cry on, basically. I staffed up that on-site test team of 20 people, and we ensured that the team always knew where the game stood when they came in the morning. And this role really established the foundation of what I see now as the pinnacle of being a good producer. The one thing that I could do every day was to be an enabler for the team. And it didn't matter what that meant. You'd find the blocker, fix the blocker, and you go. You're problem solving constantly. Anyways, a lot of stuff happened after this. So I'd realized that testing wasn't the path for me either. Even though I was pretty good at it and I picked it up fairly quickly, I really loved working with the people that I worked with. I realized that I loved enabling the development team and being a part of game production. So I went to the office of the president of Epic, Dr. Michael Capps, and I asked him if they needed someone like me to help them, to work in a production role. Mike, I remember being really surprised by this question. I don't know if it was because he really didn't expect it or if he couldn't believe I had the balls to ask it. And he made it very clear that he had no intention to poach people from his partners, especially not Microsoft, and that if I was truly interested, I would go out and find offers from other companies and then let him know. So that's what I did. Went and got 2 other production offers, and I came right back to him. Said, all right, I have them, but I really want to work for Epic. I loved Gears, I loved the team, I loved the company, and I wanted to stay. He told me he'd get back to me in a week, and what I didn't know during that time was that he had emailed the entire company to ask them if they should hire me. Thankfully, they did. So I look back on this. I reflect on that person, that scared, shy little girl from 2002. The girl that was afraid to go into a new department store because I just didn't want to have to deal with being asked what I was going to buy that day or what I was looking for. The girl that never attended a single high school dance. I went to the president of Epic Games and asked him for a job that didn't actually exist in the company. And in doing that, hopefully you see a theme here, I let my passions drive me. What is there to fear if the possible outcome is so good that any risk is worth it? Joining Epic in the first place was well worth it. And I wasn't mature enough at the time to really understand my path, but I'm hoping by telling you this story, you can be more purposeful as you move into your new roles at big and indie studios alike. So a week later, Dr. Mike got back to me, and he told me I had the job, and I was officially to be hired as an associate producer at Epic Games in January 2007. Shortly after I was hired, I remember a critical meeting that happened with Mike. Pretty much as soon as I got there, he had sat down with me and told me that they were working on a Gears of War port to PC, and that the franchise producer, Rod Ferguson, couldn't focus on it because he was in pre-pro for Gears 2. And so they needed someone, me, to take it over and under Rod's support, ship that game. The catch was, there's always a catch, that the team that was developing it, People Can Fly, were in Warsaw, Poland. Yeah, so from Seattle to Cary, from Cary to Warsaw, I, of course, took the job. And I remember Mike very seriously looking at me in the eye and saying, "I'm about to give you enough rope to hang yourself with." Yes. I had never shipped a game before as a producer, and this was a huge risk that once again the company was taking on me. Of course, me being, ignorance is bliss, naive, I thought this was a fantastic opportunity. I was super excited. I had never left the country before, and I did tons of research to learn about Warsaw, the culture, the people. And what I'd learned was that it was really a burgeoning hub for tech in Central Europe. But it was still, very much playing a bit of catch-up to the Western nations. And it was unusual to see women in tech roles over there, let alone in any kind of leadership position. So I thought, long and hard about who I was and how I would assert myself in that role, knowing that those were challenges. Outside of the cultural challenge, there were also tons of tactical challenges, getting them up to speed on our infrastructure, building trust with the team between the two studios, getting the team up to speed on all of this empirical knowledge of Gears and UE3, let alone just doing the work of porting the game with a team that didn't speak super great English at the time. For a new producer, it was definitely an undertaking. Before I went out there, I had considered that credibility probably wouldn't be a problem, being that I was from Epic, and I'd shipped a few pretty good games by that point. But credibility does not earn you trust, and that trust building took years. So in addition to trust building, I knew I needed to be a proper bridge between Epic and Poland. And properly becoming a member of that Polish team was a really critical part of that. I couldn't be seen as just an infiltrator from the United States. And this was an area where I did have some experience because I'd kind of done that when I was at Microsoft and working at Epic. So what were some techniques I did in order to overcome some of these challenges? I guess you could say it was basically brute force. I spent a lot of time in Warsaw. I pretty much moved there as much as the government would allow me to. I went drinking with the team. I learned Polish, but not great Polish. Good enough Polish to know that my name in Polish means cheap. So when I would hear Tanya in the background, it was never actually them talking to me. It was always talking about, I guess, something that was inexpensive. I don't know. And I really worked to have that team's back just as much as I would have if they were my team in Cary. And sometimes that got me into trouble, but it was what I needed to do in order to really show that team that we were all on the same team. And I didn't delegate work, I did the work. And we ended up shipping Gears of War PC on time. And successful completion of that project meant that People Can Fly, now properly under the wing of Epic, was able to go and develop their new IP, Bulletstorm. Key takeaways. You can never be afraid of huge new opportunities, no matter how terrifying they may seem. They're called opportunities for a reason. Sometimes they're only there once. And before starting a new role, be thoughtful of what those challenges are and what you want the outcomes to be. Once you've done that, and this is probably the most important part of the whole presentation, I will admit, you should create a game plan that allows you to actually achieve those outcomes. That means seriously writing it down. Here's my goal. What am I going to do to achieve that goal? And if you're not sure, you should find people who know how to achieve that goal and get that written down and read it every day and check it off. Seriously, write it down and read it. And I promise you'll be well on your way, well ahead of everyone else. So Bulletstorm. I joined this project as an associate producer in 2008. This was fresh on the heels of working closely with the Gears of War PC team. So at least, we definitely had some good rapport there. But I can only imagine the team's perspective, me coming in as their lead producer, and I was still very young and still very inexperienced, and all of the bias and stereotypes that kind of come along with someone who looks like me. That reminded me of this time that I tried to get my first apartment in Poland. Just as a side note, there's this beautiful place in the middle of downtown Warsaw, and I was really excited, walking distance to the studio, and I met with the owner for the first time, and he and the realtors started getting in a big fight while I was waiting in the hallway after we had viewed the apartment. When I asked them afterwards about what it was about, they said that he did not believe that I was a manager of a tech company, and he refused to even accept my application. And out we went. So you can imagine there's some challenges there. So anyways, while I was at Epic, I was still very much remembered as that QA lead and associate producer from the Gears of War franchise. But at People Can Fly, they knew me as nothing else than that producer from Epic. And that truly allowed me the opportunity to properly reinvent myself in that role with them, and I took advantage of it. Through that continued growth of leadership, production skill, and trust building I did with them, that ultimately led me to becoming the lead producer for Bulletstorm. I mean, it took over the course of 3 years, but it happened. And I knew it would, and I didn't wait for anyone to give me that opportunity. I created that opportunity for myself for doing what I did before when I first went to Epic, by finding the jobs that no one else was doing, and I did them myself. Funny enough, coming back from the hive shipping Bulletstorm, I was coming back to Epic as a different person. But Epic still remembered me as the person that I was before I left. And I'd never considered that before I came back home. If I could go back and redo it, I certainly would have reconsidered those implications. I would have thought about doing exactly the same things I'd done with the Polish team. I would have put in the necessary groundwork to establish clear value, great communication, and instead of just assuming that I'd already earned that, because I'd in reality been gone for so many years. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, and I'm hoping that my mistake can be your gain. Especially given, and I've said this multiple times today, that the games industry has a long memory. And what that means is that everyone you see in this room today, every one of your classmates, you will see them again. No matter what companies you end up going to, the games industry is very small. And that can create some challenges because any perceptions that you have with the people you've worked with in the past have a tendency to stick. But you don't have to allow them to, and that's where reinvention comes in. So now we're flashing forward to 2016. I hope that was a good hand movement. After being at Epic and being an executive producer for Fortnite and with the publishing team, I decided to move on. This as my last and most recent reinvention to one of an entrepreneur. Building a studio is what I always wanted to do. But frankly, for someone like me, it was scary to think about. For one, now I know that my strengths are mitigating risk, weighing trade-offs, and prioritizing stuff. And when you have no idea what things there are that you need to do because you've never done them before, it's really hard to do those things. It's really just a job of uncovering the unknowns. Of course, now I know that starting up a company is a lot of work, but it is completely achievable. The hardest part really was in me finding the right partner. And, the biggest joke in production is that we're called producers, but we don't actually produce anything. So I needed to find someone. Sorry, producers. I love producers. So I knew I needed to find someone who I could produce, basically. A counterpart who was either highly technical, such as a programmer, an engineer, or highly creative, such as a designer, creative director. And I found Justin Roiland, co-creator of Rick and Morty. Or I guess he found me. I'm still kind of unsure on how that all even happened in the first place. But the way that we found each other was that I decided that I wanted to start a virtual reality company. And the first logical step for me was to go to E3 and meet everybody and talk to them about what they wanted to do and tell them about what I wanted to do and start opening up some pathways with some potential partners. While I was there, I was visiting a friend of mine, Cliff Blazinski's, his new studios. I was there to play their game, Lawbreakers, which is actually an open beta today, by the way. And I ran into his agent, who then asked me about how Cliff and I knew each other. And Cliff and I, we went way back to 2006 when I was at, that little tester, and we were working on Gears of War. And his agent quickly jumped in and said he had a client who was looking for somebody exactly like me. That person was Justin Roiland. Justin and I chatted just a few days later, and the rest is history. And we started Squanchtendo. I can easily say that was one of the top 5 E3s I've ever attended. So Squanchtendo is our startup. We officially announced in August of 2016. We released Accounting alongside Crows, Crows, Crows for the Vive in October 2016. And we're now fully funded for our first large game release coming soon. We have a few other projects currently in the works, and we're hiring for many new positions. So you should check us out, squanchtendo.com. Yeah, I couldn't be happier or more fulfilled. So I've talked a lot. I know I've said many, many things. So if you were sleeping before this point, which I know no one was, I'm gonna summarize those key takeaways. Step 1, stop and evaluate who you are. What are your strengths? Be purposeful in deciding how and who you want to be in these new roles that you're moving into. Part of redefining yourself is starting with you knowing who you are. Step 1A, equally as important to know who you are not. There's no shame in knowing that once you've discovered a weakness, that it may not be worth the trade-off to spend the time to get better at it. And I know that sounds crazy to say because I was told my whole life that I'm never supposed to fail and I'm not allowed to fail. But now I know that there's no such thing as failing when you move on to something else that you're great at. Remember, if you're happy and you're passionate about what you're doing, you will be more engaged and you will make better games and you will make the people around you more happy. So seek that out. Step 2 is optional. That's for anybody in the room that hasn't found the thing that they love. Step 2 is do that. Find the thing that you love. Do as many different things as you can, like really do it until you find the thing that makes your heart sing. But based on today's exhibitions, it seems like you guys have got that covered in spades. Step 3, when the opportunity arises, if it makes your heart sing and it speaks to your strengths, do not let anything come between you and your ability to take advantage of it. Step 4, before starting a new role, be thoughtful of what the challenges are and what you want the outcomes to be. Once you've done that, create a game plan. Write it down. Check on it daily or weekly. Seriously. Step 5. We all know what step 5 is. Profit. So as you head out into the world, this is your opportunity now to take stock in who you are. Who do you want to be? Because once you get out there, things will be moving so fast that you'll be surprised how quickly and easily you'll get swept in the wave of doing. And doing sometimes doesn't allow for purposeful decision-making about what makes you most happy or why you've chosen to do what you do. So I leave you now with a quote that I had read from Neil Gaiman, one that I loved. And now go and make interesting mistakes. Make amazing mistakes. Make glorious and fantastic mistakes. Break rules. Leave the world more interesting for you being here. Thank you.
That was amazing. One of the great privileges of being at the Guildhall is we get such amazing speakers. Thank you. Now, I have a question for you. You have added so much to our evening and to what we can offer these students. And I would like to ask you to continue to do that as a guild master, someone who will represent SMU Guildhall and spread the good word.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd love to.
All right. And with the rights and privileges of that, first, we have the Guildmaster stole. Stole you there.
Thank you.
Quite fashionable, isn't it?
I love it. It goes with my jacket.
And second, we would like to present you with a token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much.
So go ahead and open it. I will you open that there.
Oh, wow. This is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We keep doing that.
Wasn't the mic that time.
Yeah, it was the. We'll fix that. Our next speaker, our student speaker, was selected by his fellow cohort 25. Andrew Curley is a production student in cohort 25, and after graduating Guildhall, he will work for the Daybreak Game Company in San Diego as an associate product manager. He is proud to be joined tonight by his mother Kimberly, his father Thomas, and his stepmother Jeannie. Now, I'm afraid I just stole your thunder there of thanking them. But I would like to invite you to welcome Andrew as our student speaker. Do you need the...
Yes, I need the clicker. Is the clicker broken?
I don't think so. I tried hard to do it.
Let me test it out. Oh, hey, it works. First off, I swear to God, this is the last time you have to hear me talk today. I'm probably happier about that than more than anyone else in this room. So if there's anything I learned in my 2 years here at Guildhall, it's that you gotta have an agenda slide on your presentation. So I have prepared a presentation for you tonight, beginning with a cool pie chart that I made, followed by some goofs and jokes, and then some sentimental advice. You gotta have that. And then at some point, speaking of profit, Tanya mentioned, we will arrive at profit, which I'm defining as loosely as I get to sit down and stop worrying about public speaking for a long time. So if you were to ask all the non-producers of cohort 25, what does a producer do? Most of them would probably say, I don't know, I bet they just sort of sit around and mess around in Excel and make charts and graphs, and they're pretty much right. So I created this pie chart, which may be the most 2017 pie chart you've ever seen. I have devised the perfect balance between jokes, wisdom, and sentimentality. You got to have some of the sad stuff. Just want to give you a heads up. But speaking of jokes, I got to warn the audience ahead of time, there will be a few inside jokes. I'm going to try to limit it as much as possible. But there are a few I can't resist. For example, because this is live streamed on Twitch right now, I feel like I would be murdered by some people in the cohort if I didn't take the opportunity to say, hey guys, Andrew here with another graduation speech video. Shout out to my Twitch subscribers. Welcome to the Curly Army. I've also taken the opportunity to create the thumbnail that we can use when we upload this video to YouTube. I think I've struck a nice balance between really obnoxious clashing colors, all caps, clickbait title, and a very stupid expression on my face. But joking aside, I want to talk tonight about what we're taking away from the Guildhall experience, both me personally and if I can speak for the cohort, us as a group. And in order to do this, we need to go back to the start. This was the very first photo taken of cohort 25. And I got a pretty good chuckle out of this because Lee is sleeping in the back, enjoying a nice little nap on day one. And during that orientation, Director Brubaker talked to us as a cohort, as he does with every incoming cohort. And one of the things he talked about was an anecdote from his time working on the Lord of the Rings Two Towers game. That was a huge budget game with a huge team on a very tight schedule. And it was sort of a sink or swim situation. And the team pulled it out in the end, and it was a huge success both commercially and critically. And the point of that story was when he would meet with his former colleagues out at industry events and things like that, they would talk about that experience and how difficult it was and how grateful they were for having gone through that. But never in a million years would they do that again. And that was sort of what Guildhall was like. Which isn't really the best thing you want to hear on your very first day, but I appreciate Director Brubaker being forward and frank about that. Because he's right, Guildhall is incredibly difficult. It was I want to say maybe harrowing experience, if I want to use a dramatic word. But there is a saying, the night is darkest just before the dawn, and no, I'm not referring to half the cohort's capstone experience. Hey-oh. Sorry, another inside joke. No, I'm mostly referring to Mod 2. Profo mentioned earlier today that he's sort of the running joke of the cohort, and I feel like it's that low-hanging fruit that every student speaker's got to go for. I was here for Marcelo's speech last year. But yeah, we sort of think about, at least the level designers sort of think about those first two mods as a rite of passage. If you made it through those first two mods, you had what it took to stick it out for the long haul. And that's not to say that 2016 was, a walk in the park. It was a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours. And I would be lying if I said that it didn't really take a toll on me, especially physically. So here I am in 2015. As you can see, I have long, beautiful, silky locks of hair. I'm wearing a nice pastel purple shirt. I have a peaceful, zen-like expression on my face. And then in 2016, I became a producer, and all of my hair fell out. You can see I have a pained, almost forced expression on my face, and I'm wearing drab, dour colors in order to hide the weight that I was gaining over time. And so I fully expect by the end of this year to look like this. But that's okay because, to be honest, I am living the dream. And I think a lot of us would agree that we're living the dream. As you may know, I was the producer of Dawn, if you were here for the capstone game presentation. And if you're a family member of someone on the Dawn team, you probably know what a difficult experience that was for a lot of us. There was a very real possibility that game was going to be canceled. But it was just absolutely incredible to see the team sort of come together and put their nose to the grindstone and not only make a good game that we could be proud of, that wouldn't just sit on a shelf forever in Guildhall's faculty offices. We published a game on Steam that has 11,000 downloads and over 100 reviews, most of which are positive. So that's just absolutely incredible, and I'm super proud of all of the Dawn team. And speaking of pride, I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the other capstone team, Tinkertainment. And I know some of you on the team are sort of nervously laughing and squirming in your chairs because we have a running joke on the Dawn team that Tinkertainment, they're the golden children and we're the redheaded stepchildren. everything good happens to Tinkertainment, nothing good happens to Brave Rabbits. So I just want to take this opportunity to use this very honored platform to officially bury the hatchet and extend an olive branch to Tinkertainment and say, on behalf of all of the rabbits, we love you, we are proud of you, and we are so happy for all the achievements that you've accomplished over the past couple months. And I wanted to go through some of those accomplishments. As we all know, Gearbox hired an entire university class to work on an unannounced game. But hey, IGN, actually, there's 18 of us that you didn't hire. And, you know, it's a nice headline, but you're kind of leaving out a lot of us. But again, we're not bitter. We're happy for the team. And there are a lot of other really cool things that Mario didn't mention in the capstone presentation, including they got to go to Disney World. They closed down the whole park for them, which was really cool. They got to ride on all the rides without waiting in line. Another really cool thing that I'm happy for them about was before President Obama left office, he invited the whole team. He invited the whole team for a tour of the White House. So this is them on the North Lawn. And a fun fact, I was actually part of Tinkertainment briefly during the beginning of Capstone, so I have to admit I am a little jealous and bitter about the fact that I wasn't given a ticket on Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic Air to get to explore the lunar surface with the rest of Tinkertainment. I think that was a really cool honor that I wish I was part of, but again, that's on me. We're really happy for them. And joking aside, I mean, it's like, to put it in context, Tinkertainment is, I think, the second or third university game dev team in history to be acquired wholesale by a AAA game studio. They're joining the likes of Portal, which is just absolutely unbelievable, and I think they deserve a round of applause for that. So I really am proud of you guys, and I'm glad that I got to be part of the team at least for a little bit. And as Director Brubaker mentioned, Cohort 25 has seen a lot of success. We're the first cohort to publish games before we graduate. I think 2/3 of us are employed if you count the Gearbox contract. And we were the cohort that saw Guildhall reach that #1 status, which is amazing. And of course, that's been years of hard work that's led up to this point, but I like to think that Cohort 25 sort of pushed us into that direction. So I'm starting to feel a little sad and sentimental, so I don't want to drag on too long. Also, I've given 3 presentations today, so I forget what the next slide is. Okay, pretend you didn't see that. So I have 3 pieces of wisdom that I want to leave the cohort with. But before I do that, I have a lot of people that I need to thank, both personally and on behalf of the cohort, if I can speak for them. The first is the faculty. And Director Brubaker went through a lot of this at the top, but I feel like it needs to be reiterated. I look back on myself 2 years ago before I came here. I didn't even know what Unity was. And I just have this breadth of skills and knowledge that I didn't even imagine was possible. And I think that credit goes to the faculty who are absolutely tireless in their time and attention that they've given us, and just the bounty of knowledge that they've imparted on us. I have nothing but nice words to say about the faculty, and it's very weird for me to feel like when I wake up this upcoming Monday that I'm going to say, oh man, I don't have class today, or ever again, which is crazy to think about, right? So yeah, round of applause for the faculty, please. You guys are the best. And everything that I say about the faculty, their generosity, their time, their attention, also extends to the staff. You guys are literally the glue that holds this place together. I can think of a couple of times where Andrea was out of the office, and we thought that Guildhall would just burst into flames and be swallowed up into a pit. And we were very relieved when she came back. So, round of applause for the staff too, please. And Director Brubaker talked about sacrifices in his opening remarks. Not only the students, my fellow cohort 25 mates, if that's a word, but the family, friends, and loved ones. I've gotten to know some of the extended Guildhall family, and I know it's not lost on us that you guys have made sacrifices too in order to support us to be here in this time, especially the spouses and significant others. It's hard to not be able to spend time with the person you love because their Skyrim crashed for the 8th time and they need to pull an all-nighter in order to fix everything. Sorry, Profo. So my mom, my stepmom, my dad are here. Just want to say thank you for being here and supporting me the past couple of years and my whole life. I think my brother's watching on Twitch right now and my future sister-in-law. So thank you, everyone who couldn't be here tonight, not just my family. I know we have a lot of international students here. So your support just means the world to us. And we love you all. And I wish I could have the time to talk and meet all of you. So yeah, I'm noticing that I'm rambling and I'm feeling sad, so I am going to conclude. But my last thank you goes out to cohort 25. I've never really had a sense of school pride ever until I came here, and I think a lot of that has to do with the people that I've went through this experience with. And I can say without exaggeration that you guys are the most talented, smartest, funniest, just most impressive human beings I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And it's just brutally sad that I have to leave you guys, in a couple of weeks. Another reason why Tinkertainment's the best is because they get to stay together for at least 3 more months. So yeah, thank you, cohort 25. I've laughed with most of you. I've cried with some of you. I've spent way too many hours in the building next door working on stuff with you, and I can't wait to hopefully work on more stuff with you in the future. So I want to conclude with my 3 pieces of wisdom that I want to impart on you, the cohort. The first, don't let your dreams be dreams. Shia said it best. I got to hook your attention with the memes before I actually drop the wisdom. It's super cliche, but honestly, having a dream is the most important thing in life, I think. And Tanya talked a little bit about that. Always, every single day, ask yourself, am I achieving my goals? If not, what do I need to do to achieve that? Ask yourself, am I happy? Am I chasing my dream? Do I know what my dream is? And if you're not, that's okay. We've got a long time on this earth as long as we stop eating fried chicken. Frank, where are you? Yeah, have a dream and chase it. That's the first piece of advice. The second, and here's where I get really sentimental. If my clicker will work. Oh no. Can someone in the back advance the slide? Hey, there it is. Don't ever forget the Guildhall family and the relationships that you've forged with these people over the past 2 years. This might be advice more to myself than anyone, but as I was putting this collage together, I thought to myself, God, I don't want to ever see a face here that makes me say, I have no idea what that person is up to these days. It's really easy to call someone up once a month, keep those Overwatch and Paragon and, dare I say, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, you know who you are, groups going. I think the relationships we've formed over the past 2 years are some of the most important we may have formed in our entire lives. And it would just be a shame to let those go to the wayside as someone who, doesn't really keep in touch with anyone from undergrad. I would hate for not only myself, but you guys to have that regret that you didn't keep the Guildhall family strong. So that was the really sad part. So my last piece of advice, hey guys, we're going to start getting paid to make video games, which is pretty crazy, right? So as we head out into that big, scary unknown, my last piece of advice to all of us is, for the love of God, don't let it set in, ever. Thank you so much. I love you all.
We would like to commemorate this. Thank you. I don't think we're ever going to forget this. I certainly know I won't. But when you start your new job, you will have something.
Oh, thank you. This is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.